Welcome to Money on Tap, your personal finance headquarters, where we bring out the professionals, experience, and some fun in what we call three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. We believe wise investing starts with a plan. Your investments may have merit or relevance to a time and place, but this all depends on you, your objectives, and your goals. My name is Seth Krussman, and I'm here with Ben Brayshaw and John Riders, and we're all planners and partners with Brayshaw Financial Group. Good morning, guys.
Good morning, Seth.
Good morning, Seth. Good morning.
And good morning, Ben.
Good morning, John.
To
I'm going to be nice to you today.
okay.
Be nice to John.
That's going to be a change from the normal, let me tell you.
It's a new national holiday.
You guys shaking hands over there. That's so nice. We're glad to have you listening to Money on Tap. If you're looking to sit down with an advisor and start making some of the right steps towards your financial goals, we welcome the opportunity to do that with you, and you can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. You can also find us at Facebook/3D Investing. That's a backslash. I like the slash. But hey, today we want to discuss a topic which is going to be relevant to those of you who are looking to get married. As a matter of fact, I even think it's a relevant topic to those of us who are married.
This isn't like a dating service or something like that, Seth, is it?
Well, we'll find out.
Okay, no, okay.
John.
I didn't think we were going there.
You're going to need one after that comment, John.
Well, this is May, and, stretching into summer, depending where you're catching us at, and it's wedding season once again. And so happy couples across the country are committing to happily ever after together. Today, we want to spend some time talking about making sure you're not forgetting the importance of getting your marriage off to the right foot. And that's making sure you have a plan to effectively combine your finances. But first, before we get here, it is time for Money in the News.
We have a couple good stories for Money in the News today. Hey, Seth, by the way, just to let you know, I am excited about this marriage topic today. You know, we do a lot of, we sponsor some marriage conferences here in the area. And I can tell you, and Ben knows this as well, that there's a lot of folks out there when it comes to their finances, boy, they just don't get started off on the right foot when it comes to planning and taking the right steps as far as merging their finances. So we're really excited about that topic today. And I think you guys will find it very helpful, even if you're not getting married, even if you've been married for several years, but you're still looking for some hints and some tips on how to do things better than you've done them before. So, but we do want to talk about the first story in our Money in the News segment. But today, we're kind of going to break a rule. Normally, this has to do with finances and money and all that kind of thing. Today, we're going to break the rule on that. And you know why we're going to do that? Because we can do that. So here's what's going on. So this is from Yahoo Finance. I don't know why it was on Yahoo Finance, but it was from the other day. President Donald Trump has made a tweak to his diet. Rudy Giuliani told the Washington Post the other day that when the two met for lunch recently, Trump ate a burger, but with only half a bun as means of making it healthier. Trump didn't change what was inside the half bun. The burger was still cooked, well done, and as he likes it. I think it's funny that every single president has their different thing. Remember Ronald Reagan, it was what? Jelly beans. With Jimmy Carter, it was peanuts. With George Bush, it was
Tomatoes.
Tomatoes? I don't know.
Potatoes, tomatoes.
Tomatoes, who knows? So anyway, I think it's kind of funny. So Giuliani is being interviewed, and I guess he was eating something with just a half a banana. And he said he kind of does that, kind of like, well, Trump does that. I do that too. I want to make it certainly more healthy. In fact, do you guys remember, so the White House physician, we went through a whole thing where this guy said, he actually said in January, the White House physician for Trump said, and this guy's name was Ronnie Jackson. Remember, he was going to be up for a major role there. I forget what it was, chief White House physician. But anyways, he told the president that he should be eating better and he should lose about 10 to 15 pounds. However, Jackson also pronounced Trump to be in the excellent health despite his well-known love of fast food. He says, I told the president that if he had a healthier diet over the last 20 years, he might live to be 200 years old.
I'm sure that's making some people quake.
Yeah, that's right. What? No, how could he live that long? So I just thought that was kind of funny. And then Giuliani actually went on and said, you know what? He says, it actually helps me lose weight too. He said, and then there's this guy, you guys have all heard Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer, the minority leader from New York, he recounted a lunch with the president earlier this year during a podcast interview with the New York Times. I'm trying to lose a little weight, so I have for lunch usually a cheeseburger with no bun, Schumer said in January. And Trump had a cheeseburger with a bun and a whole lot of French fries. So I think Schumer was just trying to one-up Trump just a little bit there. Now I have to say, I'm going to say Trump reminds me a little bit of my friend Ben Brayshaw across the mic from me, because if I go somewhere with Ben will request a cheeseburger but hold the bun. So I think very Trumponian of you there.
Thank you.
There, Ben.
Trying to eat healthier. My wife insists.
Yeah, she is cracking the whip hard, so hard that you can't even enjoy a regular.
I'm hoping she listens to this show. We'll get to the marriage topics.
And
I'll be discreet.
Hey, we're gonna have fun with that today for sure. But before we get to that, we have to go to our next story, and I think this story is pretty neat. Seth, yes.
When I first read this, I thought President Donald Trump made a tweet to his diet was the way I read that, but then I realized it was a tweak. That was correct, John.
That's a tweet. That's very close, though. Very close. So we are going to talk about something that is very near and dear to our hearts out here in the New Hampshire area, and that is about Chipotle. Now we have one right across from our office here in Bedford, so we often make a run over there. I wouldn't say a run, maybe a car ride over there, even though we should probably walk over and get it. But this next story I think is pretty fascinating and may be a good way for some of you out there.
Way too much traffic.
Yes, but it may be a good way for some of you to plan your retirement, because this guy made some money. Okay, so the title of the article is Ex-Chipotle Manager Accused of Stealing $626 given an $8 million settlement for wrongful termination. Can you believe it? So they thought he was taking out of the drawer. And if you guys go down here, you can see. So here's the deal. New York Daily News reports that this manager, her name was Jeanette Ortiz. She was accused of stealing $626 in cash out of a cash register from the safe of a Fresno, California Chipotle Mexican grill. She was very quickly fired for this blatant thievery, and justice was served. Right? Well, not quite. While her superiors maintained that the act was caught on tape, they failed to provide this purported surveillance footage and claimed it was destroyed. Frankly, claiming your main piece of evidence wasn't eradicated isn't exactly the best legal argument in a courtroom. So basically, they accused her of something, they couldn't prove it, and now she is going to be retired for the rest of her life with no worries in the world at all.
This is what's wrong. I mean, honestly, this is what's like bizarre about our legal system, or wrong about our legal system. It's like, we don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about the story.
Did she really steal it?
Did she really steal it? And then she got $8 million. It's like,
if that's the case,
if you're a manager at Chipotle and $8 million and you can be retired, in probably the top 1% of America level instantaneously.
Yeah,
that's maybe a little bit over the top.
I know, and to think
this is not like a CEO being accused of stealing millions, and there's no evidence, and he's going to sue for $8 million, $10 million bucks.
And most of those guys never see any time, right?
Yeah.
Those guys. So the fact is, let's say that she really did steal that. Well, so she got away with $8,626,000.
I'm just putting myself in their shoes. Like, I mean, like on some level, right? I mean, if she stole it, it was $626, and you had it on video surveillance. And so I know some of these video surveillances, like
there's a loop.
There's a loop, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a period of time that they reserve it, and they're probably like, "Listen, you're fired. We saw it on tape. You're out of here. It's $626." I mean, you're not thinking I need to keep this on record because we're going to have an $8 million lawsuit. It's $620. You stole. I'm not going to sue you for the $626 because that would be an hour and a half of our attorney time. You know what I mean? Like, right? You're just saying, hey, listen, this is.
We'll see you later.
See you later. And a little bit of this to me seems a little. I don't know the whole story.
Yeah,
so there's got to be more to it.
There's not a whole lot more here, but basically, I mean, it happens. I have an uncle of mine who owns several Culver's restaurants out in the Midwest, and he has cameras set up in a store because he had to worry about that. He has about 200 employees altogether, and so he has to just keep an eye on stuff. And he's seen money was going south, but it was gone from the register. So he put in cameras, and he's able to, from his home, not that he's there a lot because he's working a lot, but from his home he's actually able to see, and he actually saw someone dipping into a register, and so he had to go in there and make the call and make the firing. I hope he kept the tape. tape is all I can say.
Yes.
Because if you don't, oh my goodness, can you imagine that?
I mean, I don't know where this is. In New Hampshire's an at-will work state.
Well, this is California.
Yeah. So yeah.
So anyways.
Our Chipotle's going up. The price of Chipotle just went up. That's what I can say right there.
$8 million.
That's unbelievable.
And imagine she really stole. She must have felt like she just won the lottery 10 times over.
Yeah, but that's not what the court system is not supposed to make you above whole. It's supposed to try to make you whole.
Yeah.
It's like, and that's where the excessiveness. I'd really like to know more about this because it's got to be a lot more than it's $8 million.
$8 million. Well, maybe just defamation of character.
Her case was that it was retribution for a workers' comp claim that was filed or was being filed for hurting her wrist on the job. I mean that's in comparison to the money that they paid out, the $8 million versus a workers' comp, small potatoes, right? But that's kind of the idea behind her firing was that they were trying to move her on, but in a fashion that's pretty, if that were the case, like they're trying to fight, like to fire somebody in that fashion for, anyways, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and it's interesting to get the news on that.
If a manager at Chipotle made $80,000 and they were 25 years old and they were going to work to 65, so 40 more years, making $80,000, that would be $3.2 million, and they got more than twice that.
She's on easy street, that lady.
This is what the problem is with our system. We're encouraging more people to create more lawsuits because it's like the cup of coffee. Everyone knows the cup of coffee that's built on the person at McDonald's and they won millions. It's like it's supposed to try to make you whole. No one ever is whole from anything, and so to overcompensate or only exacerbates the problem we have in our legal system. You can't get real cases in. So
we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com.
Hi, my name is Seth Krussman, partner with Brayshaw Financial Group and one of the co-hosts of Money on Tap. One of the biggest concerns and largest expenses people face today is taxes. Without thoughtful planning, taxes can destroy future retirement dollars, eliminating the possibility of a timely retirement or dreams of what you want retirement to look like. If you're like most people, you're getting closer and closer to retirement, and you may be wondering if you're taking the right steps. Will my income be enough? Will rising taxes force me to give up my dreams? How does inflation factor into all of this? These are real concerns, and you're not alone. Putting a plan around your financial future is what we do. If you have questions when it comes to your financial security, and if you're looking for a personalized solution, contact us at Brayshaw Financial Group, 855-226-8551. It's time for you to start getting answers to your questions. Headquartered in Bedford, New Hampshire, Brayshaw Financial has offices across the country. We'd love the opportunity to show you how we can help. There's absolutely no cost or obligation to meet with us. Call us at 855-226-8551. 855-226-8551.
When you retire, will you have enough money to go the distance? Should you plan 20, 30, or even more years of retirement? On this Cliff Notes edition of Money on Tap, Ben Brayshaw and John Ryder carefully consider this very question.
The average expected length of retirement by an investor is 22 years.
See, when I hear that 22 years, I think, wow, is that low?
Yeah, I do too.
We don't want people running out of money when they're 87.
Yeah, I mean, we have to plan past life expectancy because if we get Seth's wife's grandfather, as a client, and he's 95, and we've planned for
no signs of slowing down either.
Wow, that's
right.
great.
I mean, that's a real concern.
So investors out there feel like 22 years is what they plan for on average, and we as advisors plan on around 30.
I mean, I always think we got to make sure we're getting well into the 90s.
Into 100. Isn't that typically what we're looking at? About 100 years old.
And stability with inflation, all those things. And then usually we come to an agreement, like what's your longevity? What's your family history?
Sure.
And usually we add 5-10% to that.
For prudent planning. So there's different products out there that are designed to help with that.
See, this is the thing people don't understand. And an advisor, in our role, we have to fulfill essentially an almost unlimited or unpredictable time period. Like it could be 2 years and, oh, wonderful, you could have spent a lot more money, or it could be 40 years and we spent way too much money too soon. we don't have the ability to see that crystal ball. People can say, I only need 20 years of retirement. And they do their own planning and this, that, and the other thing. We have so much obligation to do right by people and to make sure that they're cared for properly.
Thanks for joining us for this Cliff Notes edition of Money on Tap, with great tips from the pros in three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. Now here's more Money on Tap with Seth, Ben, and John.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap, your personal finance headquarters, where we bring out the professionals, experience, and some fun in what we call three-dimensional investing, utilizing insurance, brokerage, and fee-based planning. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. Now, today, we are going to get down to some business here with getting married and handing some tips over to you, those people out there in our audience that are either looking this summer to get married or looking to for some solutions to be financially sound and some suggestions on how to structure your finances as married couples need to do. That can oftentimes be a really big challenge.
Yeah, wedding season is in the air. I'm sure you guys are keeping track, but the royal wedding is next week with Harry and Meghan from the United States getting married. And I'm sure you guys are going to be up very, very early. It's a Saturday morning, probably at 4 o'clock in the morning. You guys will be up watching the royal wedding. Are you guys going to be, Ben, will you be up early?
No.
No, he will not be.
I
Okay,
will not.
Seth, will you be up early watching the royal wedding?
I'm boycotting television, period, right now.
Okay. He's not boycotting radio, but he's just television.
So anyway, wedding season is in the air. And listen to this, guys. According to a survey of divorce professionals, money issues, and I don't think we need a survey for this, but money issues are one of the leading causes of divorce. That doesn't mean you're doomed to divorce if you're not sure how to handle your finances as a couple, but it does mean that you need to understand how to talk about money and figure out how to use it together. So everyone thinks and feels differently about finances, no matter how much you earn. So today we want to look at 6 tips for merging your finances as newlyweds. And I'll tell you one thing, we are not necessarily marriage experts here, although sometimes we pretend that we are, but we are not. These ideas were actually put together by Bankrate.com, and they actually consulted with licensed marriage therapists out of Westport, Connecticut, with Schmitz and Paula Levi. These guys are marriage therapists out of Westport, Connecticut. But we thought that it would be very helpful because I can tell you this, and Ben, we've both had the opportunity of speaking at some marriage seminars here in New England, and we have found that there's a lot of folks out there that are getting married, and they may have a lot of different things that they've thought about before getting married, but there's a lot of things that they haven't thought about. We find that money is one of those things that people have not done a great job of as far as really talking about the ins and outs of how it's going to look, because we have so many different situations. Think about this. You have young newlyweds that are 19, 20, 21 years old that are getting married. We also have people that have been maybe married before or getting married again. We have people that are getting married when they're 35 years old.
For the first time.
Yeah, for the first time. My brother actually got married for the first time at 47 years old. So you talk about someone that had kind of set their own patterns as far as money was concerned.
Yeah. I think, we work with, family builders. We work with the Carpenter's Workshop. There's a number of different family organizations, that really provide value. And I think what we've learned, and I think this was kind of interesting to both John and I when we realized, and you kind of intuitively know it, but you don't necessarily know that it's that prevalent. But they said that, it's like a vast majority of the cases, 80, 90% of all cases, that finances is number 1 or 2 of an issue in any marriage problem.
Yeah.
Even if it's not reported as an issue, they're like, that's number 2. Like, this is the main reason they're coming to us. And number 2 is, the bills aren't getting paid on time, or, they're running up credit card debt, or they're spending money they shouldn't be spending. And, it's like, you go through those things, and you're the Bible speaks about, money constantly and gives us so much.
Most talked about topic in the Bible.
Yeah. I mean, it gives us so much effort in trying to help us discern through those things. I think that, we kind of had a feeling of calling to try to help. And so we have, been working with these organizations for years, and we get calls in all the time. People just want to know. And we say, carte blanche, give us, tell the organizations, people have financial problems or whatever. We'll try to help them however we can to understand the problem, kind of mediate through the problem a little bit conversation wise, not hold people accountable, but give some people some perspective that maybe one side or the other that we have zero bias. We don't care.
And Ben, I think the most important thing when it comes to money here is being proactive as opposed to reactive. We have seen, it's been a tough couple of years here, but we have seen just a lot of people that are really struggling in their marriages. And sometimes money has certainly been the source of some of these problems.
In my experience with working with couples through financial communication, basically, it's a lot like bringing the ultra left to the table with the ultra right.
That sounds fun.
Politics. Yeah, right. And it's like, because everybody has their experience, right? Their philosophy, what they've grown up with learning from their parents or their family or their experiences around money. And they have very strong feelings and ways of engaging around their finances. And then, there's somebody else at the table too that has that same thing happening. And to try to get people to say, hey, we want to find a common ground and a solution that works is really the goal. And that can be such a huge challenge for people to set aside things that they feel is right, down to their core. And they might need to be able to budge a little bit off of some of those ideas and some of those ways that they orient themselves around their finances to be able to be successful in a common ground. But it's not a one shot and you're done. It is consistent work. And we've talked about this many times in the past. It is like you have got to be on a board of your family with the board members there that contribute and come up with solutions and regularly review to try to make sure that we're on track and that, we're doing what we need to do here to make sure that we're successful.
If you've ever heard of, James Dobson and the crosswalk, reading literature and so forth, I was reading something the other day there, and it was talking just about how we carry in that background from our youth, from growing up in our family and so forth, and how much stuff we actually portray on what our marriage should look like. And it was just an interesting conversation, but it instantly went to finances. It instantly said, how we perceive, I remember my dad, he would do without or buy the best. Like that was always how he was, and other people are like, listen, you make do with what you can, or you don't need the very best. You could just have something, so it's different perspectives. And my parents, I remember them kind of, working through those scenarios, and you pick up some of those traits and those habits and you bring them in, and the financial side is definitely one of those I don't think we give any credit to. And we're no counselors here, but, walking through that process of, what we're going to talk about today in the financial world, I think is really going to be valuable for a lot of people. Just even kind of some simple things. We got like 6 tips here, but there's probably 6,000 tips that should be, worked on. But if you're struggling,
we don't have time for that today for 6,000.
Yeah.
We'll go 6.
But working through a couple of them, if you're struggling in this area at all, then probably starting with some basics may really help you.
So the first one that we're going to look at today, and I think it's very important, and kind of Seth, I think this speaks to what you were saying before. Let's put money on the agenda. Many times people, especially newlyweds, when they're first getting married and all, hey, everything's going to work out. It's going to work out just fine. We're in love and this and that. However, I can tell you, once the honeymoon's over, maybe before the honeymoon's over, money can certainly rise to an issue because maybe, we all come from different backgrounds. So maybe in our family, we spent money, but in our spouse's family, they didn't spend money at all. They're really, really tight. So you merge those two families together, and it can be a reckoning for sure, because I might be saying, hey, let's still spend this like crazy. And the spouse is saying, are you kidding me? We can't be going out to dinner and all those kind of things. So money has to be on the agenda.
I love what it says here. Let's do some goal setting. Let's do a 5-year. Let's do a 10-year. Let's do a 15-year goal setting practice. Because you know what? If we are, first of all, engaging our brains and some neural pathways in a way that's exciting around finances or building, that is so much more fun. And then pulling together the plan to restrict our spending. Because Because there will have to be that to accomplish goals, but it's a way that our minds work to be able to get around the campfire, so to speak, or the kitchen table, and have some fun with this, and it can, when we're in a new relationship or a relationship that's kind of onboarding towards marriage, that is a thrilling time in our life, and to be able to use that kind of momentum in a way towards those goals can be really powerful in uniting around a common goal.
So if someone's getting married out there, if someone's engaged out there, now is the time to start looking at this. Not that you want to go overboard on this, but you certainly want to have a good idea of kind of the background that your potential, your spouse, your fiance has had in the past with money, and to see, really how things are. We're going to talk a little bit later on about transparency and all that, but really the first thing is just put money on the agenda. Number 2, and I think, Ben, maybe this would be a good one for you to cover here, reining in the purchases and the debt. That's an issue certainly an issue with newlyweds.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that we find is that, when people first get married, the desire to kind of build that home, like you have, the wife trying to, they get the new place and they want the couch and they want to make a home, and a new start for themselves. And the husband's getting a job and needs a car, and there's just a kind of like pressure to spend more than probably you should. And that's a pretty common problem. And then what happens is in the first year or two, there's lots of financial headaches because, you're so far in debt and it's so much pressure. You can't go on dates. You can't do stuff. You're trying to get rid of that debt.
And the thing is too, Ben, you might have your friends that you got married with, the same year or two. Yeah. They're all doing it. They're buying the new car. They're going out and they're doing the vacations right off. Because a lot of times you want to travel before kids and all that. But many times it is a keeping up with the Joneses type of mentality that we see here. And so people will go out and they'll be making 2 salaries. And they'll figure, okay, well, we can do this and we can do this and we can do this. Not really planning for the future at all. And many times that's where newly married couples really have a tendency to purchase things really beyond their capacity.
I've noticed even before marriage happens, how many times we've sat down and broken down the finances of here's the debt, here's how we're going to attack this, kind of do the debt snowball. And a lot of the times a line item will even be the engagement or the wedding rings on there. Yeah. And just, something to consider if you're not even there yet, you're starting to add this debt. A lot of us come to the table with debt like the school debt or the car debt, that typical kind of, or even, a mortgage or something like that. But to add, sometimes $20,000 to that whole arena with, wedding bands or engagement bands, not saying that that's not what people should, do or spend their money on, but it can be a significant hurdle and one that most people have turned around and said, that's not what I would have spent my money on too.
Yeah. And, this guy here, the counselor from Westport, Connecticut, says that we all should have some, he calls it indulgence money. He says women tend to spend more money on clothing while men tend to spend more money on electronics. And I think that's probably true. He says, you don't want to ask your wife for a new Apple product. Work on a budget so that you can have an outlet for spending. Otherwise, it can lead to more tension in the relationship. So I think there's certainly some truth to that.
I want to say something like this is going to be a classic example where new couples have an opportunity to identify who's the gas, who's the brakes, right? Because there's going to be somebody buying that new tech or the clothes or whatever it is, and then the other person's going to be standing back looking at this and saying, wait a second, this is not in line with the idea that we talked about, those 5-year goals, 10-year goals, that this is not in line with that agenda or that goal over there. And those are the conversations where people, the rubber meets the road. People really start to understand who the other person is in this relationship.
Yeah, and Seth, sometimes, and I like what you said, who's the gas and who's the brakes. Sometimes we see this, that sometimes there's no brakes. Sometimes we see 2 couples that they marry and they are both big spenders, and that can lead to disaster. Now, we also see the flip side where people are not spenders at all. Those are usually the people that end up in retirement having a whole lot of money but are scared to spend it. And not that there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but I will tell you this. I think of people that I know that both of them are extremely miserly, and they just stack the money up, and they don't really seem to enjoy much either. So I think there's a balance there that needs to be created when it comes to your money.
Yeah, there's a little bit of I can think of a couple conversations that I've had with clients saying, because one wants to do something and one doesn't. One's like, always trying to save, always trying to do this, and be like, listen, if you're going to overspend, I'll tell you. Like if you're going to run into a problem, I'm going to tell you. But likelihood you're not, but you do some stuff. Enjoy it, because you're going to get to a point where you're not going to be able to, and you're going to say, well, you should have told us to do it, or there's always that kind of back end blame of But yeah, that's an area that it does take some balance, and having a third party give you a perspective on that is helpful.
Sure. Well, let's get into number 3 before we take a break here. Number 3 kind of goes hand in hand with number 4, which is talking about finances, full disclosure. But number 3 is establish some joint accounts. Many times people will go into marriage and they say, well, this is my money and that's your money. And they spend pretty much their whole lives talking about my money and your money. And Ben, Seth, I know we all have clients that are that way, that they have this is my IRA and this is his IRA, and this is, which makes sense because those are individual retirement accounts, but they also have this mentality. You can tell when talking to them that it is very, very clear who bought what into the marriage. And if you're doing that, that can certainly be a mistake.
And it can cause emotional harm.
Absolutely.
That's what I've seen. I've seen it kind of backlash into what happens for us. It's funny. What happens, I mean, we can all appreciate this one. We're sitting in the middle of a financial meeting, right? And we're just talking about how finances are number 1 or 2 in the financial marriage problem basket for the vast majority of people. And we're talking to people about finances, and lots of emotions rise.
Oh, yes.
Lots of, people start dancing around their words, and and I'm asking questions. How much? What's the credit card debt? What are you doing this? Give me your expenses. And then, hey, listen, you told me your expenses are, So we start doing that conversation with people. It's tenuous.
Sure.
It is a scary little thing. But I think, I don't necessarily agree with all these tips. There's a lot of tips here that are good, but I mean, for some people, it's like, joint accounts and individual accounts and so forth are fine. But, my wife and I, we practice, what is mine is hers, and what is hers is hers.
What's hers is yours. You said that very fast, Ben. That's good. What's hers is mine, and what's mine is mine. Yeah.
No, the other way around. So, but I think ultimately there's some level of, if it's all together, there's more accountability. I think this is personal opinion, of course, but when you start separating individual accounts, there becomes ownership and domains, and that creates walls and barriers inside marriage. And I've usually when that's inside a financial planning conversation, it's kind of it's difficult for us because we have to do different type of planning. I mean, it doesn't create holistic planning; it creates joint planning and then individualized planning. And that's, in my opinion, not the very best way to do things sometimes. I mean, I've had spouses who are super conservative, and ultimately they, they're looking at the other spouse saying, we need to be, working together on this stuff and so forth. The other spouse, this is mine and I've got a lot of money. Well, that lot of money could actually solve potentially a lot of things.
We're going to take a quick break and we will be right back. You're listening to Money on Tap.
Hi, my name is Ben Brayshaw, one of the co-hosts of Money on Tap. If you have questions when it comes to your retirement and are looking for a personalized solution, contact us at Brayshaw Financial Group. In today's volatile stock market, we can help you plan to find your successful retirement solution. Am I saving enough? Am I saving into the right places? Do my investments match my appetite for risk? Do I have a tax strategy that is going to help me keep more of what I earn? How can I maximize my Social Security income? If you are like most people, you are getting closer and closer to your retirement and may be wondering if you're taking the right steps. If you're in retirement, you may be wondering, am I maximizing my income while preserving my estate and caring for my family? We talk about all things financial in what we call three-dimensional investing, putting a plan around your financial future. If you feel that now is the time to start getting the answers to some of these questions for your own situation, give us a call at Brayshaw Financial Group at 855-226-8551. Headquartered in Bedford, New Hampshire, we have offices throughout New England and across the country. We would love the opportunity to show you how we can help. There's absolutely no cost or obligation just to meet with us, and we welcome you to our office. Call us at 855-226-8551.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money on Tap, your personal finance headquarters, where we bring out the professionals' experience and some fun in what we call three-dimensional investing. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. Today, we are talking about marriage finances. If you're getting married, or even if you are married, this is something that is significant in successful marriages, is finding ways to work together and create some balance, create some understanding, create some plans and some goals around the finances. And we've covered so far, putting money on the agenda, which is, you've
Step
got a
number one,
board. Yeah, you are the board members of your family. Let's make sure that this is that we have these regular board meetings and that it gets put there at the top of topics that you need to be discussing. The second that we discussed was reining in the purchases and the debt. Having some let's try to just minimize debt. That's a great way to find successful finances in a relationship. It can just alleviate so much of the stress around your marriage. And establishing joint accounts can certainly be a way to start to work together. Is coming together as a joint account creates an understanding around each other's spending and saving and working again together towards some of these goals. We're going to go ahead and dive into number 4 here, which is discuss your finances and having that full disclosure up front.
Seth, I think that makes a ton of sense. And I think this is probably the most important point that we're going to talk about today. And that is, we talked about having an agenda for money and all that, but I think one of the most important things is full and fair disclosure. If you're getting married and you have a bunch of credit card debt and you don't tell your fiance about that, that's a major, major problem. If you don't go ahead and are not very honest with where you're spending, if you're spending a lot of money on things that you're just wasting money, that kind of thing out there, and your spouse doesn't know about it, that is not a good thing. And to have secrets and those kind of things, especially starting off in your marriage, it is a very, very poor plan going forward not to have full and fair disclosure, not to be genuinely honest about the money that you have out there, never holding back saying, well, I have $30,000 over here that I'm not going to say anything about because she's a spender or this or that. No, I think there needs to be full and fair disclosure. And if you don't have that full and fair disclosure, that's where the problems really come, because the fiance might say, well, I never knew about that, or I never knew about that. What else don't I know about?
Right. I actually had some clients one time where the wife handled the finances and she was really struggling and didn't want to burden the husband with all of that, and handling it because he was working night shifts and stuff like that and so forth. And so she was using credit cards to basically offset the lack of income and stuff they needed for kids and this, that, and the other thing. And they were, struggling to make it work, So, but she came into our office one time and she, we were just chatting and all of a sudden she just started literally tears streaming down her face. And I said, this is something you got to share with them. I'm sure it was a very hard conversation and I wasn't part of that, but in order to get back on track, you need to be honest because, ultimately in order to get out of that, you got to make some tough decisions financially. And that would be very apparent, to the other spouse, like, hey, why aren't we doing this, or what's going on, or but she was in fear of not being able to pay the mortgage. Some of those things were tough.
Huge deal. Also sometimes when it comes to selecting investments, we all have investments that have done well and we have investments that haven't done so well, but it's very important to be transparent about that. Hey, you can say, hey, you know what, I had this IRA that I have, I lost 50% of it. Be honest with what happened in your financial background, because you don't want to just go forward without having...
And we all know that existed in 2008 for some people.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I really didn't realize the risk I was taking on, and look what happened. And, and they're blaming Wall Street, but the truth is they didn't really understand the risk that they took. Because we can blame everyone, but at the end of the day, it's like, people don't understand that the risk behind stocks and bonds and mutual funds. I mean, that's a real problem.
And, I think it's very important, too, just from a spending standpoint. Forget investments here for a minute, but just from a spending standpoint, really have a rule or set up something in your marriage, if you're a newlywed, about how much money you're going to be able to go out and spend without talking with the other person. Is that amount $100, $250, $500, $1,000? I mean, you don't want to come home driving a brand new car without having discussed it, but that happens all the time. Hey, I got the money. I can afford it. I can do that. But it makes sense. Make those big decisions. Even if it's a big decision, is $250 or $100, be very clear what the limits are and then act on those.
And those are things that that's true to my home life. Just sometimes it's like financial decisions have to be made. And now I'm in the habit of, hey, listen, I call my wife Kim. I'm like, hey, this is something we're dealing with, and this is what we need to spend money on. What are your thoughts? And most of the time she just goes along and she says, I trust you. This is what you do for a living. But I'm like, I know, but I want you to be aware. And I think sometimes just being included is something. Now I have failed at that horrifically.
Oh, sure.
But it takes time to mature into those practices.
Yeah, you don't want to come back into your driveway with your brand new Porsche, and then you realize that you didn't check with your wife, and she just went out and bought a whole a dozen Armani shoes or Gucci shoes. So you want to have a nice combination there. You want to have two financial catastrophes happen at once.
Right.
How about lending money to friends and family without having the conversation first?
You better
I'm
have
not
it.
saying that. I've just come across so many instances of that being a major hang-up where, we've helped our brothers, sisters, mom, dads, whoever those people are in our life that have maybe had a burden or a financial burden or a struggle, then they need some help and we want to help them. Completely understandable. But to go out and do that without fully disclosing or having at least a conversation and saying, hey, I would like to try to do this. This is what the situation is. Again, Ben, coming back to, just bringing the other person into the room and having a decision-making conversation. It can help so talk about the arguments you can sidestep right there by doing that one thing in your relationship. Just bring them in the decision-making process and empower them to speak into whatever they need to add. Because it's your guys' finances and it's your future. Whether or not you consider it your money, my money, whatever it is, it's the two of you together that are ultimately making these decisions and moving forward.
Right on, Seth. Right on.
Well, yeah. I've had conversations with my wife and been like, no, I really don't feel comfortable with that. And it's been family. It's been helping family.
Yeah.
And some of that's having been burned or whatever in the past or just and for me, I'm more likely to be just wanting to, I'm kind of a helper. I kind of want to help people. So, that's something that, I get burned. I don't necessarily hold that grudge because my nature is to see, I want to help solve your problem. And so that's been one of those things where it's actually been helpful to listen to my wife and create some good, guardrails.
Sure, some good boundaries there.
Yeah. I'm never going to repeat that though. I guess this is
don't
recorded.
say that again.
This is recorded, so I guess I'm in trouble.
The other side of that as well might be to the there might be some financial decisions that really just need to be made by one person as well. I mean, let's just call it family, and maybe there's a burden there, and there's something that they need to work out to be able to set them free and say, hey, I'm okay with whatever you need to do here. This is your relationship. I'm not going to necessarily try to advise. That can really, I think, set people up for having an experience that's growing. It might be a dysfunctional relationship and might need some balance, but also there's the other side of that where the other person adding too much oversight into the finances might kind of take away from
but I think
the other
getting
partner
that
really
approval,
having
I think getting that approval of trust,
right,
is and building that trust.
Yeah, I think that's all part of the same step. So if they come in and say no, don't do it, or no, go ahead and do what you need to do. I mean, those are still the same. Still passing the same blessing along to the person to do what needs to be done.
Number
so
5
what about
is
emergency fund.
Yeah, number 5 is emergency fund. Set aside an emergency fund. And this is financial planning 101. So definitely having an emergency fund in place makes a lot less stress on the marriage if you have that in place.
Isn't that my credit card? Isn't that what that is?
It may be, Seth. I don't know. I haven't talked recently.
Well,
No.
it's interesting about this because, okay, so emergency fund, we'll get into what it is, but it's funny how people understand, hey, listen, this is a pocket of money, but what other people, like your husband and the wife might completely see emergencies differently.
We have a credit limit for that. We can take care of that.
Yes. And
Yes.
I had to get XYZ. It was an emergency. I used the emergency funds,
Make the emergency fund an emergency fund, right? Not a spending fund.
Well, I think my point is to define what it's used for.
Yes.
And that, this type of fund should only be used when you both feel like this is an emergency.
Yeah. Like I don't have any food left in the pantry. I don't want to put it on credit card. We need to get money out.
Right.
To do that.
And here's another side of that a lot of people don't even consider as well. And this is not necessarily the perfect design, but it just came up this last week with a friend that they want to be able to make some steps forward, but they want to have a structure in place that allows them to not necessarily have to fall back into credit card solutions. If worst comes to worst. And so a home equity line of credit or a HELOC, basically attaching that to the house, like if you want to do that before you lose your job, folks, because guess what? If you lose your job, they don't let you tap the credit out of your house, all that money that's stored up there to be able to save your bacon, and having a reserve of cash like that in place. Don't use it. That's not my advice here, is don't use it to, pay your credit cards off if you can do that. Don't go, try to tap into that resource to make more debt accumulate. But if you're in a situation where, you only have a first lien, you've got a significant amount of equity in your home, to have a line of credit attached to the house can, if worst comes to worst, again, that can really be a place to save yourself for who knows whatever that period of time is, that you don't wind up losing the home ultimately.
Absolutely. Number 6 is merging your lifestyles. And I think this is a big one because I think sometimes, how we're talking about how one person is the gas, one person's the brakes. We're all going to, I think the majority of people I know, the personalities are different. You might have one that's an introvert, one that's an extrovert. And the fact is that there needs to be some give and take. And if there's one thing about marriage we all know, there's some compromise. And you're not going to have it all your way, and your fiance or your spouse is not going to have it all one way as well. There really needs to be
I would like to say successful marriages have compromise.
There you go. Yes.
Not every marriage that I've ever observed had compromise. And I can't say it was a successful experience for both the people.
Yeah, they don't last very long if there's no compromise. That is for sure. So I think it's very easy to be critical about each other's spending habits or the way in which you like to spend that. It might be you like to go out for a nice meal, or you like a vacation and all that. And it's very easy to be critical about each other because, again, we're coming from different families and different mindsets and different mentalities when it comes to how money is spent and how investments are made, that type of thing. So I think really coming to the meeting of the minds and realizing that, your way is not always the right way, and neither is their way always the right way. But really a compromise makes a lot of sense, really, when it comes to any kind of a relationship, for sure.
I think merging your lifestyle is one of the hardest things to do inside a marriage. I think trying to figure out, all those nuances and bringing them together is a difficult thing to do. For some people, it's easy. Hey, listen, we're just going to open a joint bank account. We're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
But, merging that lifestyle and for the older person getting married, that, mid 30s, maybe even later, even when you're in your early 30s, you've gotten your job, you've got this kind of, set process of how you live life, what food you buy, what you eat for dinner, all these different things, how often you go out to eat. There is nobody to talk to. So you walk into marriage thinking that you don't need to have those conversations anymore because I've been doing it this way the whole time.
Yeah.
And so merging that lifestyle, especially after you've built some habits in how you live it. So the older you get married, probably the larger the strain of this type of thing is going to be in your marriage.
Hey, just real quickly to wrap it up, when it comes to different ways in which you can approach finances after you get married, there's really a couple to consider. We've talked about this today. Number one is, and I don't really advocate this, but this is what people do sometimes, and some people will even recommend this. I don't. But they say, hey, what's mine is mine, separate accounts for income and spending. We're going to keep it separate. I just don't think that works. And from observing people over the years, for the most part, I can see that can cause a lot of problems. The number two way in which you could approach it is this. Hey, we're going to do this old school. We're going to get joint accounts for everything. That's kind of, you think about maybe your grandparents' generation. That was done that way where we have all of our accounts and we split everything 50-50. What's mine is yours. I think many times that's a great way to approach it. I think many times, too, people will say this. Hey, if the husband's working, he's making all the money. Sometimes it's easy for him to have the mentality, well, hey, I earned all this money. And, well, don't forget, you earned all that money because you have the capability to do that, because you have a spouse that is staying home with kids and maybe doesn't get to earn money, but is enabling you to do that. So I think having really a joint account way of looking at things makes a lot of sense. Or maybe a third way is maybe a hybrid model where you may have a separate account on the side that, of course, you're disclosing to your spouse what you have. This is not a secret, but just for maybe ease of bill paying or however it may be. But maybe a hybrid model could make sense.
Yeah, I was going to say that some of the gas and brake relationships that have been somewhat to the extreme, where the gas really recognized that's who they were, and that they wanted to be able to have the freedom to feel like they could do some spending. It really meant a lot to them, but also recognizing that they needed some structure around that and a budget around that, setting up a separate account so that this is the money that I work with within a month to do the odds and ends spending that they really enjoy doing. And recognizing that is a contribution to their family as well. That has helped them to not feel like they're stifling the other person. The breaks kind of in that structure, not really, allowing that person to be who they are, and the freedom to do that, and in that structure has worked well. And it's not like any one of these is going to be the way that it has to be done. A very staunch approach, but finding, maybe a blend of some of these that really work well for you. And that can be a real trial and error process, really. And that it can take years to discover.
One thing that's coming to mind that I think is, just here trying to relate different client experiences and so forth. I have one client who his wife has stayed home all the years where he was the primary breadwinner financially and cared for the kids. And she has sacrificed a lot to be in those shoes. And that was a tough decision, I know, for her to do that. But the financial world is a little bit of an edge there for them because, nothing's really in her name that much other than the house and, kind of the joint assets. But the retirement plans he has and so forth, I mean, it's his 401k because that's how it's titled.
Yeah.
Right. And IRAs and so forth, they can only be titled in one person's name. It is only one person's official asset, even though, joint marriage laws and all that stuff still entitle it to be,
Well, sure. If there's a divorce, you're going to have it split.
Right. But he's gone the extra mile to try to really, he's been doing things to try to get her name on more stuff to show, hey, listen, it's all what's mine is yours and what's, ours is ours, So, I think that's probably something that, for the, my wife stays home with the kids, and that's a tough place to be. And I don't think we give any credit to that in this day and age to what it really is. And there's a lot of women out there who are staying home with the kids saying, I could be working a job and maybe feeling a different level of fulfillment and so forth. And I think we've taken the real value out of how much of a better job it is being at home with your kids at times, and how that's a gift to give to your kids. That's a real opportunity. And we've kind of minimized that story in our culture quite a bit. It's kind of like everyone's got to work, and it doesn't necessarily need to be that way, and it doesn't make it better or worse if you're doing one or the other.
Before we wrap up here, just a real quick note to any of you that are out there in our audience that are getting married. If some of these things here, you sense that you're going to have a problem, make sure you get these things ironed out beforehand, before you enter into a marriage. There are many times when people really should evaluate, hey, is this the direction that I want to go? If you notice that you're on the opposite page every time when it comes to every one of these things about debt, about finances, about budgets, about, many times we will be on the opposite sides. But if you can't work these out when you're engaged or in your first few months of marriage, it's a very, very, very important thing to make sure you have a handle on. And just to be in total opposite corners and not willing to come together, that could create some real problems.
And don't think that this isn't going to be an ongoing conversation that you're going to have in your marriage. It's not like, hey, listen, we went through this process.
We're done. Yeah.
We're done. I mean, it is always, the financial story is always something that's, constant pressure in your life. So.
Yeah, over the years, we've seen a lot of couples that do end up in trouble because they've spent more time planning a wedding than they did planning the finances. Right. And it's a very common way for us to engage with our finances. We like to plan our vacations. These are the fun things. And if we can try to help you identify ways to get on board with your finances, you're going to be couples that are coming from two different families, different ideas of how things should look when it comes to money. Let us help you get on the same page, off to a fresh start, on the right foot when it comes to your money. And, how you as a couple can manage your finances. And in the end, you're going to be really glad that you took time to establish healthy habits when it comes to your finances. That's going to do it for us here at Money on Tap. You can reach us at 855-226-8551 or email us at info@yourmoneyontap.com. It's been a lot of fun today, guys. I really enjoyed the topic and hope you all have a great week.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of this radio station and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. No strategy, product, material, or tool mentioned can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information, products, materials, or tools mentioned should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. This show may be subsidized in whole or in part by a product sponsor or issuer. Securities and advisory services offered through SagePoint Financial Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC, and a registered investment advisor. All other services offered through Brayshaw Financial Group LLC are independent of SagePoint Financial. SagePoint Financial and Brayshaw Financial Group do not provide tax or legal advice. Main office is located at 116 South River Road, Bedford, New Hampshire, 03110, and can be reached at toll-free 855-226-8551.